We're going to get started. Thank you so much to all of the commissioners that are willing to do this joint meeting. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your grace and your understanding as we try to figure this out. My name is Clove Galilee. I'm the PSA for and the liaison for Office of Sustainability and the Environment. Can't remember that. And I just have only one announcement, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mary Elizabeth Michaels for a moment. My announcement is, please today speak into the mic. We are taping this, and we need you to do that. So if you don't have the mic near you and you have a question, please pull it to you, press it once, you'll see little blue dots, and then you can speak right into it like I am, okay? If it seems like we can't hear you, Jordan is over there, he's taping, I will ask you to repeat yourself. Thank you so much.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Elizabeth Michaels. I'm chair of the Arts Commission and like to welcome everybody here. And for the remainder of the meeting, I'm going to turn over the chairmanship to Alex Towers to help lead us through the rest of tonight.
Thank you, Mary Elizabeth. Hi, everyone. What we're going to do first is a quick introduction of just commissioners. We'll think it will take too long to do the whole public, so we'll just do a roll call of the commissioners. If we could start with, and we're doing both commissions, right? Okay, so maybe we should start with Mary Elizabeth and work around the table. Thank you.
Again, Mary Elizabeth Michaels, chair of the Arts Commission.
Michael Masucci, Arts Commission.
Michelle Edgar, Arts Commission.
Ashley Olson, Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment.
Olivia Walker, Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment.
Lori Yea, Arts Commission.
Deepa Subramanian, Chair, Public Arts Committee.
Susan Mearns, member of the Commission on Sustainability, Environmental Justice, and the Environment.
That's such a long name. I'm Alex Tower, vice chair of that.
Susan Jane, vice chair, Arts Commission.
Stacy Griesbach, Arts Commission.
Bob Ramirez, Arts Commissioner.
Rob Lempert, member of the commission with a long name.
Shannon Perry, Chief Sustainability Officer.
Clove Galilee, Office of Sustainability and the Environment.
Jade Rodriguez, Arts Commission, Cultural Affairs Staff Assistant.
Sophia Klatzker, Arts Commission staff.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, everyone. So we are not taking public input from non-agenda items at this time. So if we could move on to input from the public on the special agenda items, and that is namely the Santa Monica Airport conversion project update. Do we have anybody in the public? Oh, I think we do. Jerry. I'm the only one. Yeah, come on up. But Jerry, you must speak into the mic.
Sure, that's fine.
Can't be the only one. I'm wrong. First of all, happy 55th anniversary of Earth Day tomorrow. But as everybody knows, Earth Day is every day, so happy Earth Day. My name is Jerry Rubin. I'm a member of the Santa Monica Urban Forest Task Force, but I'm just speaking for myself. There's a lot of Earth Day activities and Arbor Day activities. You could plug into it in the city's website. I'm here to speak about the need for a great park. And we're all friends of Mother Nature. We're all creative people. The ballot initiative a number of years ago said when the airport closes, we should have recreational activities, artistic activities, and that's what the community voted on. I'm a big housing supporter, but I don't think it's fair to what the community voted on or fair to Mother Nature herself that we go ahead and add housing to what is truly needed, even in a more dedicated way. We are so short of park area and things that could help people, community gardens, et cetera, that I hope all of you artists and all of you environmentalists will do everything you can to support this great park endeavor that we need in Santa Monica desperately when the airport closes, and we don't need to divide our energies. We need to keep growing in a beautiful way as the coalition is doing. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And now we'll hand it over to Amber. Oh, okay. Can you please come up to a mic? Thank you. Harvey, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you please press the button until the blue light comes on?
I thought it was on.
Okay, thank you.
Hello. Good evening. My name's Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself and for Public Solar Power Coalition. We helped get Solar Santa Monica started and get y'all involved in the Clean Power Alliance, the third largest electric system in the country, in the state. Anyway, so 55 years ago, we got a living Christmas tree in the White House working with Dick Cooley, head of the First Environmental Studies program at UC after being at Berkeley. And information on that's been purged. We're trying to go to the trillion trees out of Davos and whatnot. Been asked to put in a proposal with South Coast. Anyway, out there, solar, we got potential now. So look and go on to the buildings on the side. It could all be a park, and you could have distribution systems going, heating and cooling, and thermal, electric, and hybrids with PVs. So this should be looked, if you're going to put in some housing in a corner or this and that, it could be worked out, and it could set up user co-ops and this type of thing, and try to structure with the Clean Power Alliance in the city and whatnot. So I just wanted to put that out there as an option. To look at and to be open-minded to this. There's been a lot that hasn't been done with solar thermal. There's an international energy agency working on it for 40 years and stuff going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Is there anyone else? Okay, now I will hand it over to Amber. Thank you so much for coming. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you. Start this up. Hopefully that works. Okay, love it when technology works. First and foremost, thank you all. I know having a joint commission meeting is a little tricky and it was a little extra work and people had to shift some schedules around. So we really appreciate you meeting together since you meet on tonight. We are also headed over to Virginia Avenue Park Advisory Board tonight. So we really appreciate you guys doing this meeting together for this very important project, as we've heard from the community today. What we wanted to go through was where the project is, where it's going, and what was this new survey and virtual education session that we just sent out to you. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it. We are in phase 3A, right? So we came before you in phase 1 and phase 2. We went to council at the end of January and got direction to go into phase 3. Phase 3A is about the 3 test fits. Phase 3B is about a preferred scenario, and then 4 and 5 are really figuring out the incrementality of it and finalizing and then codifying all of the work of the plan. What we realized pretty quickly was when we started taking all of the feedback that we've gotten, and we've had a great response from the community on taking the surveys, and we know that they have been long, and watching the virtual education sessions, because this is a really big site and it's a really big question, right? So we want to get as much information out as possible about what could go on here and what we're hearing from the community. So we're really focusing that community engagement. And one thing that came up was that we really needed to break down the different ways of thinking about a master plan. And that's where you come into these site design layers. So we're going to go through them tonight so that you get a little bit, this will be the short version of the virtual education session. Please watch it. It is very detailed, but it has a lot of information in it. As I mentioned, in December, Council gave us direction to move forward based on all of the feedback from Phase 1 and Phase 2. We are now in April. This is where we are. So we just launched the site design layers. April 8th, I believe, is the date that it went live. It is open until April 27th, so that's next Sunday, this Sunday. And then we're going to take all of that information, generate the 3 test fit scenarios from there, and then that's where we'll have a big community event. And that will be the 17th. It will be out, so save the date. It will be at the airport. We are still figuring out all of the logistics and things, but save that date. It will be out at the airport. We are trying to get bus tours so that people can actually go inside the fence in a bus. You can't get out and walk, but there are still active planes. And then provide input on those 3 test fit scenarios and hear kind of the background information. And so that's what May brings. And then we'll have 3 test fit scenarios and another way of interacting with the project online in June, and then we're expecting to go to council in July. Again, we're not asking folks to say, I like scenario A, B, or C, but it's really about the parts and pieces or the site design layers, right, the systems, because we will create a whole new scenario for that preferred scenario based on all of the feedback that we're getting and council direction. So a little bit about site design layers. What is it, right? Master plans are complex. There's a lot that goes into them, and so we're trying to break that down for the community so we can get feedback on those site design layers. They are based on the community input to date from Phase 1 and 2. They're based on the guiding principles, right? That's what council adopted or approved in January, so we use those very carefully as well, and then city council direction. So the 6 layers that we are asking folks to provide feedback on, there are 6 of them: connectivity and mobility, water and topography, ecology and passive uses, active park uses, housing, and revenue generation. So for each of these 6 layers, there are 4 options. So on purpose, there are not 3 of them, right? We're not saying any one of these makes up any given scenario. What we really want to know is more like this or more like that, right? The least intense is always going to be the A's, and the most intense for any of those given layers is always going to be the D's. And then there's 2 versions in between. And we'll go through each of the site layers so you can kind of see what types of things we're talking about. It's a little bit easier. I know housing has been a very big topic of discussion. This was based on council direction, right? They said to go forward with an option, or they wanted us to come back with a scenario that did not require a vote under Measure LC. So that's on one end. And then one option that has some housing. What we also realize, though, is housing really has not been a part of the conversation. And so that may mean a lot of different things to different people. And some things may be okay, and some things may be too far. And so we're really trying to figure that out as well, because we've had a lot of conversation about those active uses, those passive uses. How do we bring biodiversity back? How do we manage our water better, right? The site is 80% impervious. There's going to be a lot of really great things that we can do there. We also want to make sure that our arts community that is there continues to thrive, and that we deepen those opportunities for our artists and being able to keep them in Santa Monica in spaces that support their work. And so balancing all of those things, housing does have its own layer, and we'll go through that as well. So the first layer, connectivity and mobility. I am not going to read all of the slides. These are all in depth in the virtual education session, which you can go to the website and go in the resources tab, or just go to YouTube and Google the project name, and they'll show up in both places. So you'll see for each one of the layers, we always tie it back to the guiding principles. Again, I'm not going to read this to you. Then we also bring it back to the site inventory or the site opportunities and constraints. Again, these are PDFs that are on the website under the resources tab that go really in depth. There is about 114 pages of analysis of the site on there. So if you really want to geek out, please go there. So the parts of those documents that are relevant for each of the layers, we've pulled those forward to kind of highlight what we've been seeing. So again, connectivity and mobility, you can see in option A, right, there are no additional connections across the site, whereas in D, there are a lot of connections across the site. So again, asking, how do you rank these? So we don't ask what is your favorite one, we're saying, what do you like first, second, third, and fourth? And the way that we're asking the questions is on each layer, we ask you a couple different things. So for the connectivity and mobility layer, we're asking, what type of pedestrian experience do you like? And rank them, A, B, C, D. How many different gateways or access points to the site do you want? A few or a lot? And in between. And then vehicular connectivity across the site. Do we want to introduce any? Do we want to have a lot? Do we want to have some? What is some? So those are the types of questions that we're asking. And then, so when you go to the survey, you can respond on each one of these. And then there's also a space for comments. So you can tell us about each of these 4 in every single layer if you have thoughts and feelings about it. If you have no thoughts and feelings, you can move on, right? So it's really dependent on how these layers feel to you. But we wanted to give a lot of opportunity for people to provide their feedback. The next layer is water and topography. Again, tying it back to the guiding principles. We did a lot of analysis, you'll see, on hydrology, as well as the site. Right? The site does seem very flat, and it is. It's a runway, but it's also really long. So a 2% slope over the whole thing is about a 60-foot difference from one end to the other. And then we have about a 30-foot difference on that west end, right? If you've ever driven down 23rd, there's a big hill. And on that upper end, there's a big difference between the airport site and the Bundy and Centinela corner. And so there's actually a lot of topographic change on site. So there's a lot of different ways to deal with that, right? So water, there was a lot of conversation about water and how do we use it? How do we keep it? How do we make it infrastructure? Do we make it experiential? What does this mean to the community? And so option A is that there's really not a lot of visible water. It's really all underground. And then on D, you see a very big reservoir, right? And when you start to dig out big things, then you can do big topography things, right? So those things kind of go together. And as you look at the 4, again, from underground water to big water, meandering water, is it structured water but still has an expression at the pedestrian level? And then what are we doing with topography? Do we want just what's there and existing, or do we want some big topographic changes, which will get you different viewpoints? We'll have different moments of awe and inspiration, different levels of accessibility, and then that experience of water on site from a little to a lot, right? So those are the types of things that we're talking about with site design layers. There's another one on ecology and passive uses. This was something from the surveys in phase 2 that we heard a lot from, that were based on what we heard in phase 1. Again, tying them to the guiding principles. As I mentioned, the site does not have much impervious nature right at all. They actively do not want birds there, right? Birds and planes are bad. they don't go well together. So there's not a whole lot of biodiversity on site. And there's not, there's a couple of coyotes running around, but they shoo them off as well because planes and coyotes don't get along either. As I mentioned, right, there's only about 20% of pervious space right now, and that 80% impervious. There's a big opportunity to rewild, to get the biodiversity, to become that stopover for our migration birds and patterns and things like that. Provide those passive moments of reflection and inspiration and wonder and those sorts of things. And so that's really what this layer is talking about. We also talk about, we had a top 50 uses from the phase 1 and phase 2 surveys. And so we're trying to tie it back to those uses. So if you took those surveys then, you'll start to see the same language being pulled through. So for these, again, A being the least, right? There's some, but we're really keeping it kind of minor or less intense, and D as being very a lot of it. And so you see the same types of things across all 4 of these, but they're in different amounts, they're in different shapes, they're organized in different ways. And so it's trying to get the community to think about what are the parts and pieces that you want to see in this space, this project. And then how is it organized, and how does it relate to other uses, right? Passive and ecology is one set of uses. The next ones are going to be the active park uses. So for active, same thing, tying it back to guiding principles. We did a lot of work with the Santa Monica Open Space and amenities. Our senior park planner is part of the team, and so we're working very closely with, well, what is already in the park network of Santa Monica? What do we have? What do we not have? What do we need more of? And what does that kind of needs assessment look like? So we've grouped, again, those top 50 uses into court sports, field sports, structured recreation, garden uses, lawn activities, arts and culture, and youth focused. So you can, and this is how that kind of sorts out based on those top 50 uses. Arts and culture can mean a lot of different things. This is just coming from that survey. So we hope to hear a lot from folks. Again, A is sort of the smallest or least intense, and D is the most. Again, you'll start to see if someone's like, I want all of the ecology, and I want all of the active uses, and I want all of the water, and I want all of the everything. It's not all going to fit, right? So think about what is the biggest priority to you as you're going through this survey, right? That is also intentional, as we want people to start thinking between the layers, what is the most meaningful to you? Where do you really want to say this is, and hold it up? And that's our job then, is to take that information and create those 3 scenarios to reflect what we hear. So again, sort of least intense to most intense. Is it a meandering path? Is it structured around something? Is it a progression? Is it all in the center? And we want all of it as the nexus. And then how does it interact with different uses? The housing layer, again, showing it how it connects to guiding principles. Being that council said a no vote option, option A has no housing on it. Option D shows a decent amount of housing. And what we're trying to get to is sort of, this is the introduction to the conversation. Are we talking about one area? Are we talking about a couple areas? Are we talking about a lot of areas? What does this mean to the community? Also, we start talking about, do we want it on less land and taller? We're not talking about unit counts yet. We're not talking about types of housing yet, right? We're really trying to get that introduction of what does housing mean. In the survey, we do talk a little bit about the types of housing that are needs, from our needs assessment in the housing element. I think that's Appendix B. One of them is sort of an artist's priority. So note that in there. And that, again, is in the survey. We also start to talk about, well, what does housing do for the site, right? There's some types of housing will generate money, right? Which means that you might have, or we would be able to rely on revenue that's generated on site. But that may not be what folks want to do, right? If we don't do that, then we're relying more on external funding, right? We're looking at state funding, and, normally we would say federal, but probably not now. But that sort of nexus between those things. And so again, these are all separate questions that you can respond to and rank your answers. Then the last layer is revenue generation. From the very beginning of this project, self-sufficiency was important. And as I'm guessing we've all heard from a variety of sources, right, the city's finances are in a very different position than we were before COVID. And the fires have impacted us, right? There have been a lot of big things that we've had to deal with over the last 5 years and before. And so revenue generation, again, is how do we pay for things? Do we want things to take longer? Do we want them to happen in quicker? It's also, guiding principle 3 of balance economics, right? So this is something that we've pulled through from the beginning, was reaffirmed by council that we want to do this. It does not mean that it has to be a big, huge developer comes in and does a thing. Hopefully you've also all seen the letter of interest that we've put out. That's a way of trying to understand how recreation can pay for itself and maybe generate some income. What are those great ideas out there? And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Revenue generating, we're also looking at what are those structures on site, right? And you'll see the adaptive reuse of buildings. Measure LC allows for, you can adaptively reuse the buildings up to a certain point with the uses that are there. So do we want to augment that? Do we want to lean into that, right? There's a certain amount of revenue that the airport already provides based on the non-aviation or aeronautical uses. And so keeping that money here is something we're advocating for and saying, if you're a business and you're there, you can stay, right? Because we want those revenues to be able to help pay for things. This layer also talks about, right, it's not just housing. That's why housing has its own layer. Housing may or may not be a part of revenue generation. Again, that depends on the mix in heavy consideration. But these were the things like restaurants, cafes, the family-friendly beer garden actually ranked really high. Markets of different kind. I mean, I was like, that sounds great. But the amphitheater and daycare and youth center. So there were other things that may generate revenue that would help support the park that are other ways to think about this. So the way that we've broken it down is you'll see there's different amounts of recreation on the runway. There's areas for rewilding. There's leasable park area. Again, that's that LOI, right? If we want to, I know AYSO has sent some things. Oh, if you gave us, or if we built, we could get together and build 8 soccer fields and then lease it out for tournaments every weekend and not have to drive down to Irvine or to San Bernardino, which is my life with small children, those types of things. Or we've heard skate park or aquatic center or other types of recreation that are here but are a leasable type thing, or could be here. Then there's park program, adaptive reuse, which we talked about, and then revenue generating for that sort of complete neighborhood. And so I'll draw your attention to a couple things here, right? A is really, again, a no vote option, means we are reusing the runway. We are keeping all of those adaptive reuse buildings. And we're hoping that we can get at least one area of a fairly large leasable park program, and that will let us do some things like rewilding, and maybe we can fix up some of the buildings and things like that and try and balance revenues that way. All the way up to D, which has a lot of opportunity for revenue generation. You get a big, a big green space in the middle that's all free, or quote unquote, right? It's not a leasable park. I'll also draw your attention to the pie charts, right? You'll start to see in the first one, it's a lot of pink, some green and some gray, because that runway we can reuse for recreation, but it's not really green space necessarily. Like, you can ride your bike and you can do other things, and there's ways to program it. But as you move across A to B to C and to D, that pink area gets less and those revenue generating areas get larger, and you'll see more green and less gray, right? And so they're all pretty similar of park space between A to D, but there is a difference between reusing runway and actual fields or green space or other things. And so that's the, I grabbed the wrong slide. Yep, I grabbed the wrong slide. So I don't have the one with the icons. I will switch that out and then send it to you. But in the survey and on the virtual education session, you'll see all of those things that I just talked about in those icon or diagrams. So I apologize for that. I grabbed the wrong slide. You'll see this slide in the virtual education session. As I mentioned, right, the survey is open right now, and we provided the website. Hopefully you've all been there. It's right on the homepage of Take the 3A survey. And then the letters of interest, which is a way for the broader community to tell us all of those great ideas in a way that we can then bring to council, as well as look at those revenue generating ideas with our financial consultant to start to say, well, if we did things like this or we did things like that, do we want to consider any of these? Do we like all of them? Whatever, we'll see what comes our way. But this is meant not as a master developer to say, I'm going to come in and do the whole site. It's meant to be like, I would take this piece, or I would take this building and I would reuse it for an arts therapy center, or I would take this area over here and make it an event lawn and then have a cafe next to it that supports our disabled youth, or whatever the ideas are, all the way up through sports fields and venues and things like that. And so that's kind of the point of those LOIs. So again, on the website, you can click there. It'll send you to a website called OpenGov, which is our procurement site. It's free to sign up. It sounds a little scary. I promise it's not too bad. And the requirements for a letter of interest are very minimal. This is not an RFP. This is not an RFQ. Right? This is not a formal process. This is just, please send us your ideas. So you can submit one idea. You can submit a couple ideas. It's okay. And so I'll just plug those two things. So just to recap, April, which is what we're in, the survey is out. It closes on Sunday. Please encourage everyone to take it. We will then take that information and generate the 3 scenarios that we will debut at the community event. And then the 3 scenarios will be open for comment from about mid to late May to mid to late June, and then we will take all of that information and we won't be changing the scenarios from that, but we'll be taking all of the community engagement to council. We're anticipating July 8th to say, here's what we've done, here's how we went about it, here's what we heard from the community, here's our best analysis. Council, please tell us how to go forward into a preferred scenario. And that preferred scenario will occur in the fall of 25. We'll have more details on that later, and I'm sure you'll see us again. And we will actually be back before both commissions in June with the 3 scenarios. So it's not the last time you're seeing us. And we'll be back in the fall, I'm sure, as well. But really appreciate your time tonight and welcome your questions, should there be any. Yeah.
Thank you, Amber. Could we start with the commissioners, please? Anybody, any commissioner have a question?
I just had a thought. First of all, thank you. That was really well thought out and well organized. I would just, as an arts commissioner, one of the things that I try to think about is how can arts and culture be included in everything versus a standalone. I noticed on like layer 4, for instance, in the active park uses, we've got, lawn activities, structural recreation, field sports, and arts and culture was kind of separate. And what I would counsel as we go forward in this process together as a community is that arts and culture can be at the foundation of anything we create. So whether that be the green space, whether that be the architecture that goes into an amphitheater, whether that be something that's a space that's actually the creation of the recreational racquetball courts or whatever it might be. Any one of those things can have an artistic component to it versus having it be kind of a standalone or thought of as a standalone. I think arts and culture kind of gets put to the side, yet I think it's a foundational element to everything. And if we think about and we kind of change the way we frame how we're going to go about doing this in making sure that everything has that artistic or cultural relevance, I think it might just change the tone of everything. So that was just a kind of a bigger thought that I had.
Great,
but I loved everything.
Great, thank you.
How will you approach tensions in survey results? Say, like, I noticed for the category connectivity and mobility, if you get one result with that, that might look really different depending on the result you get with revenue generation or with housing. So what's your thinking on reconciling it all together?
Great question, thank you. And that's where this maps to 3 different scenarios. And so if there's a ton of support for option C, right, in mobility. And again, it's why we're doing that ranked choice instead of what is my favorite, and that's the only answer, because that helps us then cross-pollinate to say, okay, we're seeing a group that says this, or we're seeing a group that says that, or, these were the highest ranked across all of the layers. And so that'll then inform what those 3 scenarios look like. And so you should start to see the parts and pieces. And as we bring forward those 3 scenarios, we'll be breaking it down back into the layers as well, so you can see how that mapped. And so that's sort of the designer's job, right, is to say we have all of this information. Where are we seeing those priorities? And then how are we graphically displaying those for additional feedback? Yeah.
was that arts and culture is under active uses. And of course, public art can be active or passive. So, I hope that won't limit like the possibility. I mean, ideally, it's all interactive in some way. There's always some active interaction between the viewer and the work, and to different degrees is it interactive. But I just wanted to point out that I guess that overlaps a little bit with what Stacy was saying, that we want to keep in mind that arts and culture is really important, not only in the quote active uses, but in
All of them.
all of it. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And it's a good point, and it's one that I love that these commissions are together right now, because we also don't have a sustainability layer, right? It is the tenets of the project are
sustainability goals.
And this, we went back and forth on this a lot, but it's a good point, right? That arts and culture is foundational to Santa Monica. I mean, you are two very active commissions, and we really, just appreciate all of your work and working with us. And there's absolutely the thread that runs through. And I didn't mean to make it feel like it was like singled out to the side, but sustainability and arts and culture absolutely can weave through all of these and will be. But thank you for the comments. We will be sure to tweak that narrative.
And I love the idea of arts and culture and sustainability working together in terms of, creating opportunities for sustainable arts activities.
There you go.
This sort of a follow-on to Olivia's question, but so as you collect all this data, I can imagine there being like a central tendency and then kind of, some variation, or like really distinct clusters.
Mm-hmm.
And so one is like, do you have a sense of where it's going? And then second, if you end up with really distinct clusters, which then are in your three scenarios, which then go to council, are they stuck picking one of the three, or then do you mash it back together after they talk about it?
So, yeah, and that's a good question as well. So the three scenarios, right? Council's direction is one scenario that we bring to them has to be a no vote option, right? So we have to look at where are the clusters of things that get us a no vote option, right? And so there has to be one of those. And then there has to be an option that shows some housing, right? And so that's why a lot of this, you'll see us testing, what does some housing mean, right? That means very different things to very different people. And so when we bring the three test fits back to the community, we're not going to ask you, do you like A, B, or C best? We're going to ask you, how did we do on the connectivity layers across these three? How did we do on the passive recreation across these three options? And then when we bring all of that to council, council will then get to say, okay, we agree with this one and this one. We want to see more of that. We really want to pick up this thing over here because we think it's important. Council can say whatever they want, but they will then direct us kind of what parts and pieces across all three do they want to see in a preferred scenario. So the preferred scenario will be a totally different scenario we anticipate. I mean, who knows? Maybe we knock it out of the park and everybody's happy with one of them. That'd be great, but probably not. Yeah, that'd be awesome. But yeah, so does that help?
Yeah, that does. Yeah.
Hi, Michelle. I have a question. I know we're in the early development stages of everything, but I think something that's really important is how we also communicate this and onboard our local businesses. We have such amazing major corporations in our backyard across all those sectors, from Angel City to Universal Music and all these, to ZipRecruiter and Snap. I think it would be really critical as we're thinking about revenue generation. Of course, I love the ideas of these different, options, but also communicating to those businesses, getting them engaged, because I'm sure there will be some support and contribution possibly if, they know about this and can be part to help shape or help make a few of those things that, might be more on the back burner because of the financial constraints.
Thank you. And it's a good point. We are working with our partnerships team, right? Because they have a lot of those connections, as well as our economic development team. So on the city side, right, it's not just the five of us that are here. There's a larger sort of liaison group where we are we are working with Shannon and her team. We are working with mobility. We're working with planning and mobility and Sophie and her group. So we are trying to pull sort of the best minds in the city who have some of these connections, as well as encourage community members. If you have connections, send them our way or send them the LOI and say, right, tell us what you think. That would be great.
If I can be helpful, I raise my hand to help on that end.
Great, thank you.
when and where do the costs enter into it? And I'm not talking about the financial costs to build, but the costs associated with connectivity and mobility. The more automobile traffic that you have, the more emissions you're going to have, which was one of the primary reasons why people around the airport wanted to have the airport closed, because they were concerned about emissions. So I don't understand where the cost center, and I would think it would be an important part of the decision-making process, so that as you are evaluating which of these different layers you prefer, maybe it has less of a preference when you start thinking about emissions from automobile traffic or bus traffic or whatever it might be.
Yeah, good question. In that, that is absolutely critical, and it's part of the very first guiding principle of Start with Nature. The words that were added by council were about consequential carbon specifically, and so it's a little hard to do a carbon analysis on 4 different versions of something, right? So we're trying to get to what are we drawing first, but as we bring those 3 scenarios through, there's going to be a lot more analysis on traffic patterns and impacts potential, as well as what does this mean, like how much water are we actually saving in any one of those schemes? How much carbon are we emitting? What is that nexus between I live and work here and I can walk to things, or we're having big events and people have to drive in, right? So there's pluses and minuses across a whole bunch of considerations. Oh goodness, considerations, and it's why, right, master planning is very difficult, and there's a lot of things to consider. We were trying to keep it to 6 that sounded manageable, but as we bring those 3 scenarios forward, it will have the financial costs, round numbers, as well as those carbon impacts and our impact on water self-sufficiency, carbon neutrality, and zero waste. So the big goals of the city. We're working with our water resources team as well to understand their needs on resiliency and those sorts of things. How can this be in service of those things? With our mobility team on the bike and ped action master plans, I think is the right set of words. Right, so all of those big plans that the city has out there, we want to make sure that this is in harmony with that as well.
I have a question. First of all, thanks for the great presentation. And my first thoughts was on housing. I know it's a tricky subject because it's directly related to emotions, but is there a way to, to compare it with the existing parks of this caliber across the world, if you may, Mm-hmm. And how do they incorporate housing into a park of this size and magnitude?
Absolutely. And so we have a consultant named Sasaki, and they're a world-renowned landscape firm. They have done a lot. They've done more than 10 airport conversions for across the globe, as well as they've done lots of different types of parks and looked at very different capital stacks on how they're funded. If you've had a chance to take a look at, I think it's Virtual Education Session 2, talks a little bit about some of that. It didn't focus on housing, but it did talk about how parks get funded and what different types of things we're looking at. Our financial consultant, HRNA, has done a lot of this work, and so we're working very closely with them to understand what it is as well, and what are those great examples of how this is done, right? Central Park gets used a lot, and so does Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and there's a whole body of work that has been done in California, right? Because our housing is very different than other parts of the country, so you want to make sure that we're using examples that are from at least somewhere nearby, hopefully. And so we are actively looking at all of those as good sort of examples, and what is relevant for here and what is not relevant, or what would be acceptable and what's not acceptable, right? So we'll be bringing some of those ideas forward as well once we have those 3 scenarios. There's a lot more in-depth information that we'll be able to provide once we're actually have scenarios to say this one does X, Y, and Z, and this one does A, B, and C, and this one does L and M or N.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? But if you have examples, let us know. Yeah.
There we go. I liked what you said in response to Susan's questions about costs, but kind of phrased it as contributions, positive, negative to the larger city goals. And so, I get carbon, I get water, I get traffic. How do you think, or do you think, sort of about ecosystem part? What does it mean to contribute to, the biodiversity and ecosystem health of a city or a region in this? And is there a way to think about that?
Yeah, it's, we have Atelier 10 is the sustainability consultant, but we also have our wonderful OSE group that, has really been integral in working through some of these things. There is also a biodiversity index that we're looking at applying. That's where like living communities comes in, a little bit the site certification. There's different rating systems out there that help understand how do you quantify an improvement. Right, our baseline is really not good. So, and anything will be better, but how good can it be? And one of the team members from Sasaki, he's actually an ecologist, and he is a complete nerd on this stuff, and I love him for it, because he's got, on the site, opportunities and constraints, I think there are 6 pages about different biohabitat regions and what they could do and how much you could dig in and what percentage a site would, net us different positive benefits. And so there's a lot of different ways to think about it. And once, that'll all start to come in as well. Certainly a little bit with the 3 scenarios, but as we get direction on that preferred scenario, we'll get in a lot deeper on all of those topics.
Hi, that kind of goes with my question. I was going to ask, how are we assessing gains instead of costs, but gains for the environmental aspect of that? And then I'm assuming there's some consultants for the rewilding portion of it, or will that be decided? That's a little premature. And once you figure out what the ratio is going to be, then you'll get deeper into that aspect of the rewilding.
Absolutely. And that's in the 3 scenarios, it's just a blob on a plan right now, right? It would say rewilding, but what goes into that, right? And we've been working with Bob and his group and others to understand like what is appropriate, right? We also want to be mindful about fire resistance and those sorts of things, right? Native plants do a lot better than invasive plants.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are we going to stick with native? Like, is the idea to stick with native? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, that's my question.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking about the active recreation layer and thinking in the interest of maximizing open space, the other layer, one of the other layers, could we also consider layering the active recreation so that you've got, and I'm actually wondering about parking because I haven't seen any mention of parking anywhere. So, and
that's
maybe I just
connectivity and mobility.
Maybe, okay.
But
So
it is on there.
if we layer like,
It's hard to see.
just an example, like parking and then a pool and then a field and then, I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's
they're all
part of the
gonna-
consideration of layering that to maximize the open green space.
Yes, and making those, I've seen a lot, let's say, we've got 4 baseball diamonds, right, in the rounded areas. I've seen parks where they have, their outfields are rewilded, right? The outfield where the player is playing is the playing surface, but right on the other side, right, you're very clear when the ball goes into the rough, basically, because it is a butterfly garden or something like that, right? So there definitely are ways of layering those things. Maybe not so good for the players, but that's okay. Or can we make these, right, we've talked about with our community garden folks, there's ways to integrate, right? Is it one big community garden or farm or orchard? Is it something that you walk along and it's part of the pathway? Like, there's a lot of ways to do it. And how do we maximize all of those things that we want in a beautiful place and space that supports these things? So we're thinking about that. It's going to be fun to do the 3 scenarios for sure.
All right. Thank you. And I was thinking about the vertical gardens that we're starting to see on a lot of the, the commercial buildings. And that could be something that could also layer on top and be artistic in it at the same time. So
yeah, definitely.
I haven't heard anything yet, but I would love us to pay more attention also to our animals. I'm thinking of our shelter, our animal shelter here. I believe the police have horses. Mm-hmm. And I know Teague Wainwright has been talking about the idea of having a farm with some farm animals. We had a wonderful presentation from the Compton Cowboys at one of Michelle's event, and they're looking to expand. And wow, could we think about that? Could we think about having a state-of-the-art animal rescue rehabilitation center? We did this veterinarian who was over here and another animal rescuer got a certificate from the city council acknowledging the work during the fires where they were going behind the scenes. Oh, yeah. Right? Remember Aaron Christensen? Yep. So I've reached out to them and I said, please come and be be part of this. Share your ideas for the animals because that fits in with all of this.
Absolutely. Tell them to do the LOI. Because that would be great. And there is, like, the LOIs are not the end all be like, if you're not in, there's nothing, but it just would be really helpful to understand a full scope of things so we can bring that forward.
Okay, are there any questions from the public? Harvey, if you could go to the microphone, please.
Hello.
There you go.
Hi, I'm Harvey Etter with Public Solar Power Coalition. There was discussion about transportation and mobility and emissions and stuff. We got to hook them with the air district's doing, and they're under threat of a federal plan because they failed stuff for 50 years. Also housing, and for both of these, there's all kinds of tax credits and stuff and write-offs. There's a low-income tax credit of 40 and 70%. All right, that's money that's available, and also for solar renewables and trucks and vehicles. This is out there too. But Trump's trying to slam this. It could be worked in as a solution to try to go with his tariffs. This playing chicken with China and stuff. I don't know. Anyway, they say all politics is local.
Thank you. Yeah, we are looking at all sorts of types of funding. But yes, and if there's other grants and things, like, send it our way as well.
Well, I think that ends our question. Okay, thank you. If you could go to the microphone.
Where's the button here?
Oh, you can also just project. Oh, there it is. Okay. Hi, my name is Lily Flores, and I'm an affiliate of the Santa Monica Great Parks Coalition. I was listening to everybody's questions really deeply, and I thought there's an opportunity to think about how traditional ecological knowledge can be integrated, and thinking about, how the rewilding could be a kind of a core tenet for thinking about the design of this place. So what kinds of cultural practices do the Tongva people continue to integrate, and how does that relate to knowledge about the plants and the ecosystem? I was looking up Sasaki's portfolio. They're phenomenal, but I wonder how this can be localized by integrating a deeper sense of the deep history that's embedded in the land, but also the ongoing legacies of descendants of the Tongva people. So I just want to reiterate traditional ecological knowledge that can be seen as connecting through all of the kinds of propositions that you're taking into consideration. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Shannon was reminding me. We did work with UCLA and Travis Longcore's group last year, I guess, they did a whole native ecology project on the airport site and really dug into what has been for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. And so that was really informative. We are also finally started to get some traction with our indigenous communities and starting to engage more meaningfully. And so we're hoping to bring that forward as well that way. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Amber. And I think this brings this joint meeting to a close. We'll adjourn here. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here. And thank you, Amber. Shall we start? And I feel like roll call is less necessary now because we've already done it. Do it? Okay, we'll do it again. I am going to start with I can't decide. I mean, last time we didn't do the public because it was such a big group, just the commissioners. Okay. So Ashley is chewing, and so is Rob. I'll start. Alex Tower, Vice Chair of the Commission.
Susan Mearns, member of the commission.
Olivia Walker, member of the commission.
Ashley Olson, member of the commission. You're up. Yeah.
Rob Lambert, member of the commission, wondering why we don't have little name placards.
I know.
Sorry.
I have been working on that. I have such a great idea, and I have a person to do it. I will tell you later.
So excited about it. Okay, so it is time for public input for non-agenda items. Oh, because this is still a special meeting. I thought we were, okay. Yeah, I just figured we were no longer in the special meeting. Because, well, whatever, we're special, no matter what. Okay, all right.
It's considered a special meeting because it's happening later at a non-normal
got you.
time.
Okay, thank
So we
you.
can only comment on agendized.
All right. So let's move on to approval of the minutes, please. Oh, let's see. Harvey wants to speak. Sorry, public input on agenda items. There we go. Okay. The agenda item is about the annual water supply and demand assessment. Jerry.
Oh, there. All right. Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself and for Public Solar Power Coalition. There's a lot of stuff going on with climate now. And one of the things that's being pushed over here and over in Europe is heat pumps, okay? They have high efficiency, okay? But there's something called Pevins. The guy was 1850 was an economist and an engineer. And he said, as you increase efficiency, you increase cost effectiveness and makes it more widely used, and you use more energy, and there's a contradiction. All right, so there's a big problem. Now, all this stuff with the heat pumps, you got this Q something. It says you got a contract with them. The city's got a contract. They're pushing heat pumps. They got Rule 11, 11, 11, 21 coming in from the Air District. They're having hearings on it. They're meeting May 1st and 2nd. SCAG is about this. There's all kinds of garbage about this. What they've done is they're taking away solar thermal. 90% of the homes in Israel have had solar. I first saw it in my survivor relatives in 68. All right? China's got a bunch of it. Okay. This stuff needs to be looked at again and whatnot. But here's the deal. You have a contract with them, and it turns out that the national labs are questioning it, and how much is coming from PM2 and regular toxics, and how much it comes from climate. There's problems out there. It's over in Europe. It has not been settled, and the industry just going hog wild over it. It's got to be stopped. I want to find out what kind of contracts, what kind of research you did on this, and what's up. I want RAND to know whatever they've done on it. This is real stuff, and it's dangerous. It's in 87 destroying the ozone layer. That's just still going on. Things are changing, and we've got to have the latest input now to what's up on these issues, and not just go, blindly ahead without a rational assessment of the real situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Anybody else? Okay. All right, moving on to the consent calendar to approve the minutes.
Motion. I've never gone to do it.
Excellent.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Olivia makes excellent. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, it passes unanimously. Thank you. The minutes are done. Okay, moving on to, where'd it go? No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Sorry. There. Thank you. Water supply.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
There it is right in front
Okay.
of you.
So thank you for having me here again. I was here last month, so I'll try and keep this presentation short because it's just going to be a refresher, and then we'll get into Q&A about the report. So again, my name is Dinaz Qureshi. I'm the Civil Engineering Assistant in the Water Resources Division, and I will be presenting on the 2025 Annual Water Supply and Demand Assessment. So this is just a quick overview of the slides that I'll cover today. So this kind of talks about why we do this assessment. So this was actually required by the California Water Code as of 2022. It helps us as a city identify potential water shortages. We're required to assess a dry, hot year as our projected year. And our projected year for this assessment was July 1st of 2025 through June 30th of 2026. Here's the assessment timeline. We're a little bit off just because I'm coming again here, but we are scheduled to present this to City Council in May, so that'll be next month. Okay, so two key terms that are going to be used a lot throughout this presentation and then also in the report, as I'm sure you guys read, is the unconstrained versus the constrained demand. So our unconstrained demand is our water demand without any water conservation effort. And then our constrained demand is our potable water demand with conservation included, which is a 20% reduction. So here you can see a table with our water use from 2020 to 2024, and then you can also see our projected year, what we have projected for each user category. And our total constrained demand for the upcoming year is 10,101 acre feet. Sorry, I don't have it up on here. It's only over there, so I have to lean over to see what the number is. And then our projected year unconstrained demand is 12,626 acre feet. I turned it off, sorry. The unconstrained demand is 12,626 acre feet. So looking at our projected supply, so we have imported water from the Metropolitan Water District. So our Tier 1 allocation is 7,406 acre feet. And then our local supplies is 6,755 acre feet. And this number is something that we got from our 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. And this is from our drought risk assessment, which kind of looks at the city under the worst case scenario, which is our lowest groundwater levels and extremely hot year in the middle of like a peak drought. So adding these two together, for our projected supply, we have a total supply of 14,161 acre feet. So looking at our assessment results, without the 20% reduction through water conservation, we have a 12% surplus, which is great. That puts us in a level 0 shortage, which means that we do not have a shortage. Our recommendation, though, is to stay in stage 2 shortage. This is for a couple of reasons. There's state legislator that requires meeting conservation targets, and staying in that level 2 helps us do that as a city. Conservation also helps with the city's broader water goals. And then without the stage 2, our water demand would go up, which would result in higher rates because we'd be importing more water from the Metropolitan Water District. Another reason why we want to stay in stage 2 is because of the relationship between conservation and historical drought. So if you look at this graph, this is kind of the past 5 years in LA looking at the drought and the drought severity. So as you can see, we've gone through some pretty big changes where we've had years of very, very intense drought followed by very wet years. So yeah, substantial rain in 2023, 2024, and thus far in 2025. This has partially relieved the drought, but our imported water comes from the State Water Project and from the Colorado River. So the Colorado River levels are not recovering at the same rate that our state water supplies are. And some officials say that they may never recover in our lifetimes. And then continuing with conservation ensures that we stay ahead of the curve and we're kind of getting ahead of the swing in our weather pattern. And then on the right here, I have a quote from the DWR director, kind of stating that the state's approach is also to take a conservative approach to our water supplies. So by staying in a stage 2 shortage level, we're also aligning with the state's goals of how they're managing the water supplies. So now looking at our assessment results, again, with that 20% conservation included, you can see here our constrained demand is the 10,101 acre feet, which puts us in a 32% surplus, which is bumping up from what we had before. So the requested action from the commission is that the staff recommends the commission motion to support a resolution to adopt the 2025 annual water supply and demand assessment. And then our next steps are finalizing the assessment, presenting it to City Council in May, and then submitting this to the state before July 1st. All right, thank you, and now I will take any questions.
Sorry. Okay. So I know the report was done to satisfy requirements.
Correct.
Using the most conservative scenarios. And then I'm wondering how much of this report was also part of the water rate increase?
So that's a separate project that I'm sure you all know Sunny Wang. He's been working on. I personally have not been involved in the rate study project that much, so I can't speak to that. But this is something that the state kind of lays out the requirements for every year. That's not to say it's exactly the same as what the city's looking at when they're projecting their rates. So I can't really comment on that and say if there's a correlation or not.
Okay.
That's a Sunny question.
So Sunny was here last month?
Yes.
And is he coming back or no?
I'm not sure if he has any plans of coming back. I do know that there are a series of neighborhood meetings that are coming up in the next few months where he'll be talking about the rate study. If you go online and you Google Santa Monica water and wastewater rates, there's a webpage and it has all of the meetings listed. So if you want, you can definitely talk to him at one of those.
Okay.
Yes.
So thanks for the presentation. So I wanted to unpack or try to understand a little bit more the constrained versus unconstrained.
Absolutely.
So like, Santa Monica, California has been doing water conservation for years.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. And so what specifically, are the actions that the city takes between the two? Because, like unconstrained doesn't mean that we go back to, whenever, right? Yeah. So what specific actions differ between those two?
I'll try and pull up the report on my phone really quickly because we do have a section in there that talks about the water conservation actions that we're taking, and we actually have a subgroup within the Water Resources Division, and they focus on conservation throughout the city. So they helped me kind of write up what they do in here. So let me just find it for you really quickly. It's hard to see on my phone. It's in the draft, yeah. Do you have it? Okay, yeah, that would be great. Oh, you know what? You'll have to, sorry. You'll have to pull it back to your screen. Oh, I think she's about to play. I just want to share the section with everybody.
Just takes a second.
Sorry. Okay, perfect. And then I'll just, I'll move it over again. All right. Okay, so. All right, actually, you know what? I'm going to. Not really. I'm going to move it over this way. Find the section first and then share the screen. Okay.
You all received it, right, in your email?
Okay, so if you have the report in front of you, it's section 2.2.1.1. It's titled Water Conservation. 2-5, yeah. So we have the water neutrality ordinance, our recycled water ordinance, our water use allowances, exceedance citations, water use consultations, our landscape rebate program, landscape consultations, water waste response, MWD water conservation rebates, and free water saving items and customer support. So these are all things that the water conservation team does, and if you want to speak with them, they will be happy to kind of show you how you can lessen the amount of water that you use, if there's any fixtures you can install, anything you can do with your landscaping. So that team really focuses on community outreach, talking to people and letting them know how they can do their part to kind of help with the conservation. But I do just want to state that the city's been really, really good about this, and the community has been always able to hit that 20% target every year since 2014, once we first started kind of enforcing this. So it's never been an issue for the city.
Yeah, so those things are all sort of long time scale, though. So what we're essentially recommending is just kind of keep doing what we've been doing.
Exactly.
Even if we stop those, it's not like it's going to go up 25% in a few months.
Right. It's more longer term, but okay. I mean, yeah, we're basically, if you were at this, I recognize some faces. If you guys were here last year, we're basically just asking to stay with the status quo, what we've been doing for like the past 5+ years. There's really no change in any action that we need from residents. We're just asking them to keep doing what they've been doing, because whatever they've been doing, it's been hitting that 20% target. So that's great for us.
Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about your recycled water supply table 2-6. It's on 2-14, the page number. It says Smurf has been under construction for this year.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, is it back up, or is this projection kind of dodgy?
So it's not back up yet. We're working with a consultant. Their name is Woodard and Curran. They're working on the MAPS and Smurf rehabilitation project. So MAPS is the Moss Avenue pump station, which pumps all the wastewater to LA, and Smurf is located right next to it. So both facilities need to go through some upgrades. So we're currently evaluating kind of what route we want to go down with the plant and how we want to work on the rehabilitation. So once we kind of get that finalized and we move forward with one option, then we'll be able to get it back. And it is able to produce up to 560 acre feet per year. The thing is, though, like with our recycled water supply, we have a much greater supply than our demand. So even with Smurf currently being offline, we are still meeting our demand with absolutely no issues at all, and we still have a lot of leftover non-potable water.
Thank you. And then the other question I had about this is with SWIP, the difference in the production from year to year is pretty big. And so I'm just wondering, in January to December of 24, it's at 533 acre feet. And for July 25 to June 26, it's 1,100 something.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Yes.
Can you speak to what that's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the plant is designed to treat up to 1 million gallons per day, which is 1,120 acre feet. So that's its max production amount. But since we don't have that much demand in the city, there are times when the plant is not running at its full capacity. There's times where it's shut down. So when you look at the actual number that's produced in the past year, it looks like a big difference just because of these reasons. But when we look at what we could produce in a theoretical scenario, it is the max capacity of the plant. And since we have to report to the state, what we could produce maximum in all of our facilities, that's why we have that number in there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Harvey?
Hello, I'm being heard. I'm Harvey Etter. I'm speaking for myself and Public Solar Power Coalition. With these fires, it's following what I've heard is, thousands a year drought. And this isn't going to go away, and that we had winds from 80 to 100 miles an hour. That's the new normal. At the air district, they were discounting these fires and stuff, saying they don't have to put it in their plans because it's exceptional events. This is the new normal. This has got to be dealt with. It's going to get worse, not better. And we got to deal with it. And, okay, we had an earthquake in 1857 at Fort Tejon. It was the biggest in the state's history, 7.9. I've heard it saying over 8.3. There was in 2006, earthquake in San Francisco, and San Francisco burnt to the ground. All right? We just had these fires up here. They're not going away. They're getting worse. We've got to deal with it. We got to deal with, taking it out of the water and the ocean and stuff, and whatever we got to do. And we got to be real about it, and we got to spread around if there's going to be fires. Anyway, there's Lucy Jones. She's got her own consulting company, and she's doing this stuff. And there's a woman that just did a dissertation on this. She said that that there was in 1690 there's a quake of 7.7, and that redoes every 200-300 years. We're over on that. And that was the one that preceded 1857. Okay, so we had 7.7 1690. 7.8, 06, San Francisco burned to the ground. Bank of America was started then. I heard they say that the 07 crash, this is Bannon saying it was caused by that, and that's how we got the Fed. Anyway, this is real stuff, and we got to deal with it. And we brought this up when there's joint meetings of the city council and the LA Fire Department. My dad was dying. A friend of mine's dad was fire department and helped out and stuff. And I feel close to him and said that we ought to be coordinating this, and all this stuff is on now. Insurance, it's all going to hell, all right? The property and all this stuff is real. The insurance commissioner for LA is out up at Berkeley, and they said the damages are going to be over $1 trillion, and for the last 10 years, 10 trillion. That's trillion with the tree, that's 1,000 billions. That's the new. That's on the climate stuff and the deaths and all that, mortality and morbidity and mortality.
Just to quickly, go ahead. Just to quickly speak on the fires, because I know a lot of people have been asking about that. I'm just really pleased and proud to say that during the fires, the entire city and especially the water division really stepped up. Everybody was working around the clock to make sure all of our reservoirs were full. We had enough water. Our SWIP plant was also online producing recycled water, so we had that as backup in case we ever needed it. So I do just want to say the city was very well prepared. We're very lucky that we didn't have damage within Santa Monica's borders, but we do have the capability to supply water during this time, and we also tested all of our hydrants and made sure that our demands could be met. So just to kind of put everybody at ease, I just wanted to point that out.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I believe the ask is for us to support the approval of the report.
Yeah.
Correct? Okay. All right. So the ask is to approve or to recommend or support the approval. Yeah.
To support a resolution to adopt the 2025 annual water supply and demand assessment.
There it is.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Ashley.
I'll second it.
Oh, did I pressure you with my eyes?
You did, but I wanted to do it.
I love that.
I was looking
Thank
for
you.
permission.
We're brilliant minds think alike. Thank you, Olivia. All in favor? Aye. Okay, it passes unanimously. We support you. And so do you need something from us, like a letter, or is that enough? Or what is happening with that?
You know what? I don't know if we got
All right.
a letter last year, but
Okay.
if you could provide one, that would be great. And that's something we'll, take to council, and I'll add it to the attachments that I send over to city council for the meeting.
Okay, is that something that Clove, you can draft? Okay. Awesome. Isn't that nice how I offered to do that and then put it on your desk? We will do that.
Just for everyone's edification, generally the way it works is that Clove takes the motions and those motions are included in your minutes. The minutes go to our council members. Those motions that are specific to an item that's going to council can be delivered as a separate notice of motion, just so that it can be included as an attachment. But generally what happens is your recommendation is included as a sentence in the staff report that accompanies the document to council.
Okay, thank
I
you.
will edit my staff report tomorrow. Thank you so much. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you. Have a good night.
And thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah. And we do have an administrative update, and I believe that's going to come from Clove. Or is it me that has to crack the whip?
I can do it. Hello, lovely people. So I got the most recent report on the trainings that you all have been so diligent and helping me get completed. And I handed them out to you. If you wouldn't mind tonight, before you leave, to quickly just look at the list that includes your name. And if you did any of these already that are in red saying that you didn't, could you please check it, give me the piece of paper back, and then I need something like some sort of proof from you so I can send it along. I'm so sorry. You're doing so well. And we will get these done. And I thank you for your patience with our bureaucracy.
In the event that our email address has changed and we no longer have access to that, where all of that might have been stored, what then? Redo the trainings?
I'd like to make a motion that they carry over from a previous commission.
Or anywhere else on the
I'm
planet?
not sure you can
How many trainings can we do in a lifetime?
Yes, I will discuss that.
Because I do it
With-
for work, I do it for a swim team, I
Understood.
do it for
We
so many
understand
things.
that. We do.
Yeah.
We do. I know.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry,
And then
but
to have to
you may have to
redo it.
redo them. But the ones that you did that were with your other email address,
Yeah.
I think I might be able to talk to them about that.
Okay, thank you.
So yes, if just take a second before you leave,
Yep.
and give me that piece of paper back
Okay, thank you.
with your lovely notes. Thank you.
And with that, we adjourn. Thank you.